Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 303 of CryptoBiography, and it is part 10 of The Brick Wall. I'm really enjoying writing this, and still plenty more to go. Here we go. All right, here we go. Bill gave the instructions, and they touched gloves, but even more than the first fight, Carson heard nothing. He went back to his corner, and the bell rang. Like the last fight, he was still feeling that same strange nausea right up until the first punch of the fight, which was swung by the mortician against Carson's cheek. Reality snapped back, and he could see, feel, and hear properly again. He jabbed several times, keeping the mortician back. He then tried for a jab cross, but it deflected off his opponent's gloves. The angle felt very strange, having to punch uphill for the first time ever, even in practice. Like his own, his foe's arms were very long, and he couldn't easily find a gap in his defense to exploit. He kept jabbing and felt some jabs and other punches land on his gloves, his arms, and sometimes his head or body. He was landing very few of his own. The sweat was already beating up all over his body. He slipped to the side, tried to find angles, but the mortician seemed to be able to follow him easily. He may have taken the nickname of the brick wall, but he was finding punching this opponent an awful lot like trying to find the soft spot in a wall. The end of the first round came, and he took his corner. He drank some water and poured more over his head. Before he knew it, the second round was starting. He moved forward and decided to throw only a few punches this round and see what he could learn. His opponent kept throwing punches, but Carson was so intent on blocking that nothing really got through. The mortician seemed to be getting angrier as the round wore on, and Carson wasn't letting up his defense. The crowd, too, seemed a little restless, making unhappy noises that were on the verge of boos. A few seconds before the end of the round, Carson opened up. He threw a huge flurry of punches. The mortician stepped back, clearly surprised by this change of strategy. Carson landed a few before his opponent tightened up his defenses. And by the time the mortician had decided to start throwing again, the bell rang, and they returned to their corners. But that was not going to keep working. It was a nice moment. Carson felt that if there had been judges, they may have been impressed, but it was a trick more than a real stratagem. Round 3 started, and Carson felt a little better than he expected. He tried not to let it go to his head. If he threw everything he could this round, he might not have enough strength in the final 2. But he couldn't just cover up either. He moved towards the mortician. He threw jabs and ducked around the punches that came his way, mostly. A few pops off his head, but he was still thinking clearly. A couple of his hits landed, but he didn't seem to have any effect. He decided to try to cut this guy down with body blows. He kept jabbing to the face, but started looking for opportunities to avoid the defense and get hits on the stomach. A few hit, and though it didn't have an immediate effect, he remembered his training. Hits to the stomach were one of the best ways to take his opponent's wind, but it was a cumulative effect. For now it was not of any obvious help. He kept at it. His arms were getting quite tired by the time the bell rang. He sat down and knew that he had 2 rounds left to go. He drank a bit of water and poured water over his head. He didn't see a better strategy, so he decided to keep at it. The 4th round bell rang, and he stood up, trying to look energetic, though he was in fact quite tired. He jabbed and tried to avoid the punches of the mortician. Mostly he was successful, but he did get popped a few times. His opponent may have been tiring as well, because nothing seemed to cause real harm for Carson. On the other hand, his hits didn't seem to have much effect either, though he kept giving body blows whenever possible. Sometime in the second half of the 4th round, Carson gave a good body blow that landed hard. There was a grunt from his opponent, and he stepped back. Though his defense was back up and Carson's blows did not land directly, it gave Carson hope. He tried for a few more body blows, but the mortician was now keeping his defense low. The bell rang, but Carson almost ran back to his corner. He knew what he would do in the last round. Soon the bell rang again, and Carson advanced. He started by doing what he had been doing for most of the match, jabbing high, then trying for body blows. As soon as his opponent lowered his defenses to cover his body, Carson went high, popping the mortician once on each cheek. He stepped back, and Carson positioned himself so that he could force him into the corner. They traded blows, most being partly blocked, and eventually the mortician clinched so he could get out of the corner. Sure enough, Bill broke them up, and the moment was lost. Carson met him again nearly in the middle of the ring. He threw some jabs, looked for a punch coming in, slipped it, and hit the mortician. It was a solid hit, but the big man didn't go down. Still, the crowd roared. Carson moved in, punching high, then low, then high again. He blocked the big man's punches. And just when he had lost sense of time, the bell rang. The sparring match was over. There wasn't a winner, as there were no judges for this sparring match, but it had gone the distance. Still, Carson felt proud of what he'd been able to do. He plopped back on the stool in his corner, and several people came over and thumped him on the back in congratulations. They were all yelling and screaming. Across the ring, the mortician also had some people congratulating him. Bill was waving them to the middle. Carson got up and met his opponent. They touched gloves. "Good fight," Carson said. "You too," Mortician said, apparently without venom. Carson made his way out of the ring, and Lydia was there to greet him. "You did great, love," she said. "Thanks, darling," he said. "Let me get a shower." He took a quick shower, and just as before, most of the crowd was gone by the time they made their way out of the gym. Carson waved at Bill, who waved back, apparently not needing to talk with Carson right away. They went home and examined Carson's injuries. They weren't too bad, though they would look worse in a few hours when the bruising set in. Once again, Carson knew where some would be and was surprised to see small cuts, bumps, and red starts of bruises where he didn't remember being hit. But he had Lydia to comfort him. They made love that night, and he fell asleep easily, looking forward to the next day when he could discuss his fight with Bill. He got up the next morning and kissed Lydia before heading to the gym. It was Sunday, but Bill would likely be there. When he arrived, he saw that Bill was there, working with a couple of the lightweights. He saw Carson and nodded in a way that told Carson he would be a few minutes. He watched and tried to learn what he could. When Bill was done, he came over to Carson. "You haven't unlocked it yet." There wasn't a question in his voice. Carson shook his head. "No." "I'll keep at it. I can see you're thinking when you're fighting. You're planning moves. But you've got to get where you aren't thinking everything out, where the best move just comes naturally. And you have to unleash yourself." "I wish I had some idea how." "And me too, Carson. If I could just tell you how, I would. It doesn't work that way. Take the rest of the day and don't think about the problem too much. Just heal and get ready to start working towards your first fight, which should be in 2 weeks. Carson brightened up. "Okay." Bill put a kindly hand on his shoulder. "See you tomorrow." Carson was just turning around to the door, but he heard a voice behind him coming from the corner office. "Carson, a word." He turned and went over to Jake. Jake stepped back and waved him in, then closed the door of his office so they could talk. "You still owe me some money, and so I have another job for you." Carson put up a finger. "Thanks for reminding me." He took out the $10 he now owed and said, "Thanks, but I won't need any more of your jobs." Jake looked sour. "The guys at the gym do jobs. It's a big part of what we do here." "Well, we agreed that I would fight for you, not that I would help you with debt collection or whatever you want to call it." "True, but if you're not going to help me with my jobs, I don't see why I should put you in any big money fights." Carson's stomach dropped, but he tried to keep his face level. "I see. So you think without me helping you with your side business, I'm not pulling enough weight?" Jake grinned and nodded. "But a big boxer, a winning boxer, is worth a hell of a lot to you, right? What are you getting at?" "I've learned a lot here, and not just about what happens between the bells. The heavyweights are always a big draw, and so no fighter can be a bigger draw than a good heavyweight." "True. So I'll make you a bargain. If I win my first 3 money bouts, you won't ask me to do any more of your jobs. You'll get a big boxing draw to make you even bigger, or I'll lose one of them and you'll get me helping out with your jobs. Either way, you win." Jake thought about this. "Okay, kid. 3 fights. You win them all, you'll just be my big marquee name. Lose any of them, or miss a gym payment, and you'll shut up and do the jobs I ask you." Carson grinned and put out a hand. "And my first purse fight is in 2 weeks, right?" "Right," Jake said. "But you aren't the headliner. Not this fight. Not even the second. You win 2 in a row, I'll make you part of the headline fight for your third." Carson shook. "Okay, it's a deal." And that's the end of this story for this week. Obviously, we're setting up for, what's going to happen next in the story. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure enjoying writing it. If If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And thanks for listening. Words and music, copyright 2023, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.